The Voidz, featuring guy from this band, listening to new album. I'll probably add a proper intro and outro to this later. Okay, here's my proper intro. When I went into this album reaction, I knew that I liked the Voidz, but I wasn't overly familiar with their earlier albums. I think I'd heard Virtue twice at this point. I definitely heard Human Sadness, but I'm not even sure if I'd actually listened to the Tyranny album in full. So yeah, I've heard way more of the Strokes than the Voidz. But it wasn't just the fact that the Voidz had a new album that made me want to listen to it. It was the fact that this new album by the Voidz was getting absolutely savaged, and probably still is getting absolutely savaged. I saw it on the front page of albumoftheyear.org, and when I first saw it, I think it had about a 52 out of 100 score, and the score has only gone downwards since then. To the point where they've gone from an album that's got so many positive ratings that it's flagged as a must-hear album to an album in the red. Hell, man. And also, the score ratio on Rate Your Music is also more or less the same. And the album score was already in the red before any chance of recovering the score was completely nuked by, Sir, I've just been notified that a red flannel has hit the tower. So yeah, I was just like, what the hell went wrong with this album? So I had to find out for myself, really. I didn't actually listen to the songs individually at any point before I did this reaction, so I was going into this mostly blind. Of course, I couldn't avoid the whole controversy surrounding the album artwork. To be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that Julian Casablancas himself was coming out and defending it in a weird way, I might not have even fully realized that this was an AI artwork or an AI enhanced artwork. I'm not sure exactly how it came about, but when I look closer at it, I do start to see things unravel about it. Like, from a distance, the tears don't look super weird, but then you look closer and they seem a bit too goopy. And also, I feel like it should be nearer to the, the tear duct. The other thing is the fact that the eyebrow looks like it goes like here, and then goes like, yeah, at the bridge. But, I did not want to judge a book by its cover. I wanted to fundamentally judge it on what the album ultimately sounded like. So now, here is my first full listen of Like All Before You by the Voidz, and afterwards I'm going to look back on that review and see how much my opinions on the album have changed, if at all. Yep. Let's just hear this. I think this opening track is just, well, it's a minute long, and I think it's just a few chords. Hang on, there's a full album video. I had the playlist open, but let's just... Alright, we get to hear Overture, the first 30 seconds or so again. Yeah, as far as opening instrumentals, short opening instrumentals go, it's alright. Doesn't feel completely pointless. Just, not spectacular either, but yeah, not too many judgments for that one. But soon, maybe the major judgments will start. I'd say Overture is nice, even. This definitely sounds like something that may have gone viral on TikTok or could go viral on TikTok. I don't know. Yep, there's the auto-tune. I read about mucho auto-tune on this album. I mean, the instrumentation sounds good to me, so maybe I could put up with the auto-tune. Okay, I feel like the drums are getting a little overpowered in the mix. That's at least my first impression. I feel like this has a bit of an adults are talking vibe. I'd probably rather listen to that song over this, but I still think this is at least okay. Yeah, I'd say I'm at least content with this so far. Nothing that I'm overly desperate to praise, but also nothing that I'm overly desperate to criticize. The auto-tune stuff, that's not really anything new. I think the last Voidz album had plenty of this. Some of the recent Strokes concerts even had Julian with auto-tune, so I don't know. Oh, that's the end? No, it's not. Good bass work on that song. Good sounding synths, I reckon, as well. I think this is one of the first songs that was released from this album. Alright, so this is the first song that has the more traditional Voidz boundary pushing and genre mashing. I don't know if I'm going to have much else to say about this song unless there's a major switch up, which is definitely possible when it comes to the Voidz. You know, throwing a few classic rock, hard rock tropes into this song, but in a largely endearing way, I think. Some more little bits for good measure. Great song, I reckon. Is this the point where the album goes bad, though? Only one way to find out. The drums sound like they got Stuart Copeland in for a guest drum performance. Definitely got that kind of feel. Okay, I was going to say it was sounding very classic Julian, and then we've got very much new Julian in this chorus. Yeah, these guitars in the verses sound pretty nice. I like me a good wobbly guitar. I don't even know if this is a synth solo or a heavily processed guitar, maybe. This is a heavily processed guitar, probably. Alright, song's winding down. I'm definitely happy with that song overall as well. Next one's a bit shorter. I suppose this track's going to continue on this vibe for the remainder of it, which I don't think I'd mind. I'm trying to figure out if the type of auto-tune on this actually suits the vibe of the song, or is like borderline over the top. It kind of swings between both of those things. Could have maybe pulled back the auto-tune a little bit for this last part. Hey, spectral analysis, it sounded alright to me. We're halfway through the album and I haven't had any real concerns about what I've heard. How about that? Yeah, it's some more classic Voidz, new wave / synthwave vibes. Mama say, mama sa, mama kusa. That sudden minor chord change threw me off a little bit. Yeah, compared to the earlier tracks, I feel like I could almost do without this song. But it's still somewhat good. Why is this album good? They told me it was bad. Am I out of touch, or is it the children that are wrong? That's the thing with the Voidz. You might hear a song that you're not really vibing to, but then it'll switch up, and it'll probably be something more out there or generally better sounding. I feel like this song did that just then. Oh, that's only the first part of the song, I guess. Yeah, this is still track 7. Okay, picking up a bit. I'm just scrolling through the YouTube comments now, waiting to see if there's someone criticizing the album, but, well, obviously the Voidz fans are more likely to comment on this than on the general music forums, but yeah, wow. Well, we've only got 3 tracks left on this album, well, 2 if you don't count the 30-second outro. And so far, I feel like every song has been at least fine, which absolutely obliterates my expectations of how this album was going to be. Alright, auto-tune's back. Okay. This is probably the first song I've heard on this album where I'm getting the feeling that Julian could have been a bit more inspired with his vocal performance. I feel like a lot of people have been saying that about the entire album, but I never really overly got that impression from the earlier tracks. You know, the rest of the song still sounds okay so far. Alright, good, interesting solo. Kind of bumped up this song a bit, maybe. Yeah, this song started getting better in the middle, and then it's gone back to being okay. So I'd probably call this and Flex Assist the weaker tracks, not really including interludes. Alright, next song is When Will the Time of These Bastards End? It's the lowest rated track on Album of the Year. Let's see why that may be. Alright, this song is kind of weird to the point where I don't even know what to say about it. This might just be the second track on this where I thought that maybe the auto-tune is a little gratuitous. Most of the tracks are just sort of like, yeah, there's Julian on his auto-tune again, as he is prone to doing. Usually I feel like it's good when a Voidz song goes in all kinds of different directions, but with this song, I'm not entirely certain that all those different directions really work. And here's the outro. Yeah, no complaints about the outro, and just seeing now that by the looks of Prophecy of the Dragon came out in 2023, so did Flexusis, and all the same came out in February this year, so quite a few of the songs were released well in advance. I can see why people would complain about that. And also they released Overture as a single. That is a choice. That is a choice, alright. But yeah, 49 out of 100? I definitely don't think I'd go that far. As for how far I go, I'm gonna let me in the outro decide that. So I did that initial reaction 5 days before this recording that I'm doing right here. And since then, I've gone back to the earlier Voidz albums and also listened to Like All Before You a second time. Firstly, I went back to Virtue, and, well, that album's pretty bloody amazing. So this new album definitely isn't going to compare to Virtue. It's got some absolute classic tracks, which I'll put on the screen here if I remember them anyway. I also listened to Tyranny possibly for the first time. It also has some great tracks. It's got a bit more of a claustrophobic sort of overall production style, I feel. Slightly more of an endurance test compared to Virtue, even though that album is, you know, goes in 50 different directions. But yeah, no, Tyranny is good as well. And then, obviously, I went back to Like All Before You. And this time, I made sure to be listening through a pair of headphones, because one of the big reoccurring criticisms I've seen of the album is to do with bad production. Have the music up close to try and get an idea of how the production feels and you know how satisfying it is and whatnot. And of course also to reevaluate each song, and I still enjoy the album. Probably even more than I did the first time. In fact, even When Will the Time of These Bastards End, the song that I had the most puzzled reaction to, when I heard it a second time, I was like, you know, this song isn't actually all that weird. Apart from Julian putting on a snooty British accent in some of the parts, beyond that, it's got a very, you know, very pop core to it. But no, I like a lot of the riffs, the solos, even the textures that the instruments create. But yeah, I haven't gotten to probably the main aspect of the music that has been a target of criticism, the Julian Casablancas vocals, particularly the auto-tune Julian Casablancas vocals. Yeah, so the vocal part is the one element of this album that I feel like I can argue the least against, because it is it's inconsistent, although I'd personally say it never devolves into flat out agonizing or ridiculously lazy. A lot of people are calling this album just lazy overall. I don't think that just applies to the vocals, I mean, how can you even argue against that? That is a completely subjective criticism, I reckon. Like, how do you define lazy in this instance? If this was made by any band other than the Voidz, I feel like lazy wouldn't be a common word used against it. I think that's part of why this album has had such a massive torrent of bad reviews, because of the expectations that people have had of the Voidz and their mix of experimentation with catchy songwriting. Overall, Julian Casablancas' use of autotune on this album definitely isn't a flat-out deal-breaker for me. His voice is still getting tuned to notes that fit the song, so it's not like he's just wailing about and they're just sort of like trying to pitch his voice to the correct note for the song. I can't think of any songs that use autotune but aren't actually in tune. Emily Montez, like that. That's my best example for now, yeah. Never enough money in the bank. I guess the other thing that people don't like about the vocals is that the lyrics are kind of buried under the, additional processing and sometimes the auto-tuning effect. Whilst I haven't really picked up on very many of the lyrics on this album. I think that's just because I'm generally not very good at deciphering lyrics for songs where the singer isn't perfectly enunciating the words, as often Mr. Casablancas has done throughout his career. I think there's supposed to be some kind of meaningful social/political context to the songs here, but as long as the lyrics aren't straight pee-pee, poo-poo shitcore, I just want music that sounds good, and it sounds good to me. The AI jokes were kind of funny at first, but if you keep using them, then you're neither funny nor providing any sort of insight whatsoever, so shut the fuck up. That's probably the only thing about this whole situation that actually makes me mad, really, because like the criticisms against this album are not only subjective, but they're also criticisms that I can totally understand people making for this sort of music. Quickly, going back to the production, I still feel like maybe Square Wave didn't quite incorporate the drums, didn't give them the right balance in the mix, but could have done it better. Apart from that, no other real mixing issues jump out at me, really. I thought of watching the Needle Drop Not Good video for this album just to see what criticism he was making and possibly even try to counteract it, but I really don't think it matters. At the end of the day, I'm not mad at people criticizing this album. I'm just baffled at the sheer amount of vitriol being thrown against what, to me, sounds like a perfectly cromulent album. People are consistently, maintaining that they're not just criticizing the music because of the AI album cover, but sometimes it's a little difficult to fully believe that they're making that distinction. Yeah, I don't know. If this came out from like an independent band making their first album, I think it would get them a lot of hype, positive hype. Come on, just chill out. It's fine. I might be ready to die on that hill. This album is fine. Do you agree? Do you think what did you think of this Voidz album? Yeah, if you hated it, I don't really care. But if you liked it, cool. To wrap this up, here are some of the 3 main takeaways that I hope you get from this video. Number 1, an album can still be good even if it isn't as good as the band or artist's albums before it. 2, auto-tune isn't inherently bad. And 3, if somebody tells you that an album's bad, then actually listen to that album before you decide whether they're right or not. Don't just take what they say at face value, especially if they're an Album of the Year user.